had this idea last night about our proximity to disaster as living beings. Right? There may be a soul or a spirit, something immaterial, something ethereal that is ultimately our essence. But nevertheless, even if that's the case, we have these physical bodies that can be destroyed. Right? We can die, physically die. May not be an ultimate spiritual death if we do indeed have some kind of immortal immateriality about us. But there is a proximity to disaster that we all have at any given moment. Right? So I'm driving my Ford Volvo right now. Okay, so if I'm driving this amazing piece of machinery, the act of me driving has increased the probability that I could die of a car accident. In fact, if I'm not driving, the chance of me dying of a car accident or in a car accident is zero. If I'm not driving, if I'm not near a road and I'm not driving, the chance of me getting hit, the chance of me crashing my car in that moment is effectively zero, because I'm simply not proximal. There's no proximity that I have to dying in a car accident when I'm not in a car, when I'm not near a road. I'm not near cars, right? Proximity to disaster increases as soon as I step into a car, as soon as I turn on the car, as soon as I drive on the road to wherever I'm going. And this is the case throughout our lives. But we just are not always aware of it, right? If you walked around obsessing over how proximal you are, how close you are to disaster at any given moment, then you're not really living a life. You're just avoiding a death. Living a life and avoiding a death, for our purposes within this context of existential, within the context of existential meaning and purpose, it matters, right? It matters what you focus on. Right? If you're skydiving and the whole time you're just obsessing over the fact that there is a high probability, your probability from dying from falling out of a plane went from zero when you're on the ground to whatever the percentage is, right? Whatever the risk is. So our proximity to disaster is always in flux. But I had this idea about how when I was a kid, I didn't really appreciate how proximal I was to physiological destruction, death. Right? I used to climb trees, like 4-story trees, well, 3-story trees anyway. I would climb them in like 30 seconds. I'd just scale the whole tree. No harness, nothing. I'd get up to the top of that tree and I'd just sit there. And we had this tree beside my house, and it was a big old sugar maple, and these things get big. And I would just climb up there and sit there, just hang out on the branch, in the canopy. Now, I was not appreciating how close a horrible fate was when I was doing that activity. And that's the same with everything. You know, the whole idea of money and financial peril, financial ruin, and your ability to take care of yourself in the modern economic framework that we live in. I had no appreciation of that. No appreciation of how difficult, when I was a kid, how difficult it was to hold down a job, start a company, build a family, maintain a good marriage. You know, there's all kinds of different types of disasters that come about when you become an adult. Just like how, as you leave childhood, there's other disasters that were once probable that are now no longer probable. Right? I now have no chance of dying in childbirth. Zero. Because I'm already born. Right? A baby has a chance of dying of all kinds of things that a grown man does not have a chance of dying from. So as we grow up, we become more resilient physiologically, but then other things come up, like I'm referring to as a baby. There's no responsibility that you have for your own well-being, right? As a human baby, your parents are ultimately responsible for you. So your parents have a proximity to the disaster of you dying as a baby, right? I'm a parent, so I can appreciate this fact. Before I had kids, I had no appreciation for the stress that parents go through in protecting their children, in raising their children. And now it's something that is with me every single day. And again, it's different stress. I'm no longer scared of my children dying as babies, me dropping them as a baby or something like that, because they're not babies anymore. They're out of the baby stage. But my point is, when I was a kid, I had no appreciation for this proximity to disaster that we all have. You're really only a few decisions away, or really a few happenstances away from being on the street, right? You make one mistake on the road and you're driving, you could have a massive lawsuit that comes your way, even if it doesn't cause you immediate financial, or not necessarily immediate, even if it doesn't cause you physical harm, or if the civil lawsuit that gets filed against you in this hypothetical scenario, even if it doesn't affect you directly, right, it affects your insurance, it might, depending on the mistake, imperil your ability to drive, right? You've got this record now that you've got to carry around, that you made an error on the road and it led to someone dying, or led to someone becoming injured. And even just the fact of knowing that your negligence on the road led to someone else's disaster, just carrying that around with you is, again, a type of psychological disaster that you don't have to carry because of what you did. All of our decisions are high stakes. We don't appreciate that as a kid, when we're children. As we get older, though, we appreciate how powerful our decision making is. As a father, any given moment, you're holding your baby, you're walking on the street with your son, you're teaching your daughter how to drive, any of these things, you've got to make sure that your decision making is optimized in all of these different potentially dangerous situations that you find yourself in. Even more broadly, this idea of socioeconomic disaster. If I go and do something really, really bad, I could lose my job, right? If I make an error, or if I lose my temper on my manager or on client or something, right? I could ruin my career. I could ruin my reputation. And again, it's not a physiological destruction, not immediately, but it's a kind of socioeconomic destruction that would then affect my abilities, my body's ability to provide for my family. Could affect my ability to raise my kids properly, to pay for things like their dental care. Right? It's all high stakes. And so all of this to say on a Sunday morning, never underestimate the power of your decision making.